create essentially a road for ourselves. And in one of his books, Thus Spake Zarathustra, this essentially is a guy, Zarathustra, who goes up in the mountains at the age of 30. He contemplates life, trying to figure out the meaning of life, his existence, etc. And he kind of comes up with all these ideas. Later on, so he goes out and teach. So he teaches all the people about what he learned, and they begin to believe in it. They begin to be inspired by it, motivated by it, right? Influenced by it. And so they keep coming to him for more questions, deeper meaning, deeper purpose, right? Keep coming to him for more. Towards the end of the book, he essentially like throws his hands up and says, I have nothing else for you. The rest is for you to learn yourself, right? Why am I even bringing this up? Because people were seeking a program. They're seeking a new program. They're seeking to be conditioned. And as we talked before, we are conditioned. Your program is essentially for 90% of your existence. On a day-to-day basis, you're only consciously thinking 10% on average. The rest is automated processes, which means you're conditioned. Parents, family, school, things you read, things you do, etc., etc., etc. Yes?
But isn't there a myth surrounding that that's like you only ever use 10% of your brain?
No, because they're both, let's think of this. They're both brain. They're both brain. Subconscious, below conscious, right? Which are things learned over time that become habit. When we said the deeper meaning of things in our memory are things that actually become habit, right? They're automated. You no longer have to think about it. You drive, you eat, you go read, you come to class, you have your schedule, you have this. You're not even thinking about it most of the time. 10% about things you're thinking of, new ideas, creative concepts, desires you actually have that you want to do, right? And the rest is everything you've been taught. You've been conditioned, you've been programmed. And I'm not saying any of this is neither bad or good, right? We're just saying is, right? Everything's neutral. That's your perception of whether it's bad or good. That's up to you to decide. And so, we have to get a little bit deeper than that. Then we're like, oh, okay, well, Professor Ross, in terms of our thinking, our cognition, who we really are as a person, how does that work, right? If we're just programmed in these automated processes, 10% of the time we're only thinking about who we want to be, right? Because we've been instructed to be a certain way to live in a society, right? You're in school, because there's a lot of schools, this just seems like the normal thing to do. Right? You're not doing anything revolutionary. You're not doing anything unique here. How many people have been in school before, been in college, get a degree, go work in the field you want to work in? Endless number of people, right? Therefore, it's like, hey, what do you really want to do, right? We get the program, we get the rat in the laboratory. We get that, right? Go on the highway, it's 1 million rats in the laboratory. Y'all trying to get from point A to point B and go to work, show up at 8, get off at 5, go eat dinner, right? We get all that. That's the program. But beyond that, right, there are forces beyond. So as we try to think deep, we try to discover who we truly are. We gotta sometimes go even beyond what psychology kind of can understand, right? So if we were in neuroscience and we want to measure brain activity, like, hey, I'm gonna hook up these nodes to your brain and to your skin so we can measure and visually see on the monitor brain activity. Like, oh, wow, I see it. That's a physical thing. Okay, that's very scientific. We can see your brain activity. Interesting. Right? And there's technology beyond that. Magnetic encephalographs, which means it doesn't even touch your skin. It's a probe out here. And it still measures activity. How is that possible? That means that even your thoughts, Your thoughts. You think your thoughts are located in your brain. And that's where they are, that's where they live. That's completely false. Your thoughts are through your whole body, through every organ, right? It resonates through your body. Your thoughts actually are even outside of your body, which means you radiate like a radio signal, right? Your phone is getting all this information because they hooked up the radio signal, so now you're able to get information back and forth, go on the internet, go through all the apps, et cetera, et cetera. Where's the signal? I can't see it. You can't see it. It works. It does magnificent stuff. It's invisible. Right? But even through this technology, we can see it. We've made it scientific. So what does that tell us? There are things beyond our forces we understand, that we can understand. But you do need to be aware of that. Right? And even when the field of, say, quantum physics, where we're trying to understand things like dark matter and things like that, we've come to the conclusion it's an invisible energy source that controls particles, controls atoms and particles smaller than atoms. We don't really understand it, but it exists, an invisible force that controls it. So what could we call that? I don't know what we could call it, right? But the point is you have to be aware, right? Have to be aware, but what's the invisible forces? Right? Who all here believes that they have a soul? Come on, who all believes they have a soul? Raise your hand. Who here don't think we have a soul? Who has a good argument to support human beings don't have a soul? All right, so we all agree. Did anybody define it for me? Be pretty difficult to like have a precise definition of it, right? You say you're just an animated body. Congratulations, we're all animated and moving around and need to do stuff. We're alive. But what's the soul? How would you define soul? Right, so soul basically be invisible force governing the particle. Invisible force, invisible force, invisible force. Things beyond our comprehension. Right? And so we need to step back a little bit and say, like, oh man, psychology is interesting, emotion, behavior, disorders, abuse. That's cool. But the point is, it goes beyond that. Beyond, it's like we're trying to discover this whole story. Right? And then you discover this whole story, I guarantee you this probably is the most powerful field of anything you can learn ever. Because you're learning about yourself. Like this will take you further than anything. So, we understand that there are invisible forces beyond our understanding. We understand we have a soul. We understand that thoughts are even outside of the body. They radiate, which means you can probably manifest some things. Hey, I want to be a billionaire one day. Guess what? Keep motivating and thinking that way, you might get close. You might get one. Because we just said the thoughts are radiate. They communicate with others. Which means your thoughts right now are communicating with each other too. Are you aware of it? Are you conscious of it? I don't know. Right? And we said consciousness, the higher level of thinking. Below, subconscious, sub means below. Below means under. Which means this is top, but like even when we said memories, looks like, man, the ones that become automated memories, automated, what's your name? It's automatic. Can't even think about it. I've actually remember what you did last Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Guarantee you won't remember. It'd be difficult. Or what you did last May 16th. You can't remember. Unless you went on Facebook or something. But you automatically can't remember. which means that the things that are important, the things that need to be automated are stick, right? They stick and they become part of our habit, they become part of our behavior. But the things, the desires, as we begin to talk about motivation, desires may mean true self. So as you begin to think about what you want to do, what's your purpose here, all these different thoughts, and they begin to deviate with the conditioners, people who've instructed you in life, people who tell you A plus B equals C, this is how you do it, this is the best way to do it, I advise you to go this way, you should do this, here's some money to do that. It may be different, right? So the whole point is, who are you? Coming to true self. Who are you? Do you know who you are? Who are you really? And you can give me a story like, oh, I grew up in this neighborhood, I went to this grammar school, and I tried. Like, it's cool. Who are you? Like, from your own consciousness, not the stuff implanted in you. That is the purpose of all that. And if you can understand who you are, it makes life easier. Because anxieties, as we talk about motivation, we talked a little bit about boredom, right? Just use the word boredom, just to keep it simple. Versus optimal pleasure. As we talked about motivation, we talked about moving away from boredom to optimal pleasure, right? Optimal pleasure could be bad too, it has consequences, etc., etc. But boredom is anxiety. So how we have to say is we want to move away from anxiety. That's what motivates us. Going back to Nietzsche, he used the word angst. Right? He was German. But essentially, it's relative to anxiety. So anxiety is boredom too. So we got to broaden our minds when we think of like, what do you mean by boredom? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, you want to move away from anxiety. Whatever is causing you from anxiety, you move away from it so that you can move towards pleasure. Right? This happens everywhere in your life, every single day. You're like, oh man, my relationship with mom and dad, my relationship with a significant other, money, not having it, or having too much, whatever the case may be, right? You will have anxiety. Unless you start to really think about self. You start to think, man, what do I really want? Outside of the forces, we said that last part when we said, sustenance, we talked about sex, and then we said socialization, belonging, right? That last part is very hard. We all want to belong. We all don't want to ruffle too many feathers. We all want to be part of a community. We all don't want to go on the opposite side. How come you don't want to go on the opposite side? Because you fear it. And fear is another form of anxiety. Right? Now, if we start to become to our own self-actualization, right? Well, let's say self-transcendence. Right? Self-transcend. How do you transcend self? You're like, man, I used to really believe in this thing. I used to really think like this. I used to really behave like this. Why? You're like, it wasn't really me, to be honest. I was doing it for a lot of other stuff, a lot of other reasons. I was doing it because society, I thought this is what you do. I had not come to know myself. Once you come to know self, you transcend and you become something greater than your former self. One last thing before we just kind of go through the slides, right? Right, so moving away from anxiety to get to optimal pleasure, but hopefully we'll land somewhere in between, because optimal pleasure is not the greatest thing too, because optimal pleasure may have some sort of limitation. They have a limitation that causes anxiety. You make $1 billion, now it's not enough. You need 2. You make $2 billion, now it's not enough. You need 8. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Right? That's how it works with everything in life. Forget the money. Too much of anything is a bad thing. If you eat too much, your health will be bad. Right? You have too much of anything, it can be negative. So we're trying to say moderation is key. That's the good life. Whereas, the balance between too much pleasure and too much pain, or as we are calling it, anxiety. Third part I want to talk about is, are we familiar with Sigmund Freud?
Yeah.
Right. So we all know Freud. Freud's pretty popular, probably the most famous Western psychologist, philosopher, all of the above. Well, Freud worked with another psychologist called Carl Jung. Are we familiar with Jung? Jung? You know Jung?
Yeah.
A little bit. You know anything about Jung, about his theories, his ideas?
Well, I've heard of him before.
Okay. One of his most famous ideas is the shadow. Alright, so Jung's famous idea is the shadow. What is the shadow? In life, we said there's yin and yang, right? There's evil and there's good. There's wealth and there's poverty. Our purpose is to, I believe our purpose is to try to get towards the middle, right? All of it can cause anxiety. Remember, we just said too much of anything can cause anxiety. So the shadow is essentially the part you're not honest with about yourself. You can't show the world. So think of this. You live every day with anxiety of not being who you truly are. Right? Behind closed doors, we could be extreme liars, cheaters, deceivers, manipulators. Right? We could tear people down in our quiet time, which means that maybe only a few people in the world truly know those parts of us. They truly know who we are. And for the rest of the world, we wear a mask. The mask is like, hey, no, I'm a nice guy. I'm great. I'm smart. I'm this and that. But behind the closed doors, we are wearing a mask. And mask goes back to why? You're like, well, Professor Ross, we do live in this world and we have to operate within these rules, these values, these norms. This is my culture, this is my language, this is that, this is how it is, this is what I've been instructed, this is what I've been, that's great, it's all great, right? So basically you're hiding your true self. It's hidden in the shadows. But it does manifest from time to time. So it manifests to come out when you're extremely angry or in very high anxiety, or you're frustrated, or you're maybe even super happy. It comes out this time. Your shadow begins to leak, right? Which means we have to work on our shadows, which means being honest with ourselves. Not being honest with others first. That's a them problem, not a you problem. You have to be honest with yourself first. So all the things you think are like just bad thoughts, perversive, just horrible, I will not be accepted. I can't say that. I can't do that. I can do that. You have to work on that and bring that part out to create some sort of balance of a real you. If not, you're always going to be a fake you, right? You got all the success in the world according to society, right? But you will always be a fake you. So why live an entire existence being something you truly are not? So once again, we're trying to reach to the highest part of ourselves with our mind, which is transcend. Need to find meaning and identity beyond the self. Remember, the self is subconscious. The self is subconscious and conscious. The subconscious, this is all the stuff you've been given. Mommy, daddy, schools, books, YouTube, social media, friends, lovers, etc. And then the consciousness is just you. What do you want? Who you really are. Tell the truth to yourself, not me. Just talk to yourself. Right? Question everything. Question it all. That's the only way to kind of experiment to come to some self-actualization and realization. Briefly, through Maslow's. Right? So we start here, physiological need to satisfy hunger and thirst. We move up, safety needs to feel that the world is organized and predictable. Organized and predictable, right? You got a house, you have a car, you go to school, you have a job, feel safe, secure, stable. Great. All right. You've tackled that part of life. All right. Belongingness and love needs. Need to love and be loved. Think of this. We all want to be loved. Half of the reasons for your choices is to be loved. Don't you all want to be admired? If you're an athlete, don't you want to be the greatest so you can have fans? Like, wow, he's so great. He's always the GOAT. Who don't want to be? Who don't want that? Right? If you're interested in a family, you're like, oh, I want a family and children. Why? You may give me the reasons, right? You give me the basic reasons. What we said would be more subconscious basic reasons. You know, I want a kid, I want to have a legacy and continue on. And that's great. But the real reasons are selfish reasons. You want somebody to love you back unconditionally. It's your children. You hope that they will love you back conditionally, right? Until you realize that kids grow up and they can start to think for themselves. And things might change. So we have a need to avoid loneliness and separation. A need. We got to be part of that group. We have to be part of a structure. Your very identity, if I ask you all types of questions, right? Like, hey, what race are you? You need to give me an answer. Why? Because you accepted the belief. You accepted belonging to something. Right? You may not fully understand it, and it may be complete BS on a high, upper level thinking latitude. You're like, no, I thought about that, it makes no sense. I'm glad that, the subconscious allowed that to be conditioned for human beings to organize themselves and identify people and discriminate, and, whatever reasons is there, right? But some people could transcend beyond that. And, I'm just a human being, there you go. Man, I don't understand. What does that mean? I'm like, it should mean something very simple. Just a human. All the other stuff is, when we get to socialization, right? And then we got to get to the purpose of it. And the purpose is a lot of good, a lot of bad. Yin and yang, got the shadow, right? And it's also there to keep people in the shadow. Keep BSing people so they don't reach the top of this. Well, why do you want an entire society reaching that? Guess what? You probably won't have too many workers in a manufacturing plant or something. You know what I mean? So obviously there's reasons for these things. You gotta keep it. The rats in the laboratory, right? They keep the ants moving to do the job. Great. Right? So yeah, we need to belong. We are proud. Think of this. You're like, hey, I'm proud to be whatever. You're like, man, you proud to be that? That's great. You're like, we're gonna have a parade because I'm proud to be it. You're like, oh, you have a parade. Like, who isn't proud? You're proud. Like you were born into something. You didn't put any effort towards that. That's not even, you didn't put any desire. It required no effort. Like, we might have a parade for whatever group because we are proud. It's great. Everybody in the world's proud of something. But most of the stuff don't require work. It's just talk. Right? Which means that we have an inherent reason, an inherent innate impulses to belong and not be lonely. Right? We don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to be different. I don't want nobody looking at me. I'm too different. Esteem needs, need for self-esteem, achievement, competence, and independence, which is starting to get up and move up, right? Now you start to become a little bit more of self. Like, oh yeah, this is all the society stuff, things I've been conditioned to learn. These are the programs inside of me, just like software, programming. Now I'm starting to move out and start to think a little bit more for myself, right? Start to have a little bit of independence and needing recognition and respect from others. You start to say like, hey, I need respect because I'm a person just like you are, and that's about it. I need dignity and respect at the basic level. Now the other stuff we could argue all day about, right? So we kind of think of like the United Nations universal basic human rights, right? All human beings are equal. Who here don't think that all human beings are equal by birth? Right? We just said we all have the same source. We all have this invisible energy, right? Organizing the particles of our body and our mind, which means we're all in the same field, right? So we think higher and we start to think more about this, and this becomes important, right? It becomes more of self, more about self. And then we move up, self-actualization needs to live out to our fullest and unique potential. And we start thinking about, hey, we only got enough time. I really want to live out my potential, not the potential of what I've been instructed to do from others. I start to fulfill my own desires. I realize I only got a short amount of time to do it. I realized that probably my programs held me back a lot because I wasn't even thinking about myself. I was thinking about my conditioning and my software inside of me from the people who program the software inside of me. Right? Which is what Nietzsche, going back to Nietzsche, and keep going back to these guys. If you're not familiar with Nietzsche, just start to look them up. All right, what Nietzsche described as the overcome man. What does that mean? What are you overcoming? It means you're overcoming self, right? You're born helpless, you're instructed, you're given food to live, you're given shelter to live. You reach a point to where you feel that certain things in life are important, of value, based off what others have told you. Right? Others have told you this is valuable. You've accepted it at this point. And then slowly, life, as you go through life, you go through all the anxieties of life, right? Failed relationships, divorces, bankruptcies, bad health, right? All these things you go through. Lies, deceit, deception, right? All these things you go through, you begin to think of a higher meaning to it. And slowly you hopefully start to move to overcome, right? Overcome your past to dictate the future so you can reach your optimal self, which in German you call Übermensch, which essentially the idea of Superman came from, right? You become Superman. All that really means is you overcome yourself and you become self-guided. Any questions so far about this? Any ideas, any thoughts, any debate, any counter arguments, anything you guys got? What do you think about this? Yes?
I like the idea that you kind of put that we kind of have to live in moderation, because like a lot of my beliefs too.
Yes.
Like we kind of have to like be in moderation. Like even when we eat, usually when we kind of like split it into three, so 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 air. So that's like moderation. You're not gonna like be too full or like, not enough. So I think that was interesting.
Balance is key, right? The universe is in balance. Like We don't have to make this stuff up and just say, all right, look, the universe is a balance. The earth is spinning around the sun, other planets, right? At the core of our galaxy is a black hole. Everything's spinning around that. Everything is in balance. Nothing's too extreme. If it's too extreme, it flies off. It doesn't exist to be part of anything. Right? So we don't even have to look far to recognize that balance is the key. We're trying to make some order out of chaos. So yeah, Superman, the idea came from that, but it's really just to overcome self, right? In Christianity, amongst other religions, it's the same kind of dictation, right? The means in between. Live somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. It goes up, comes down. You don't want to be on either side too extreme. Right, we're gonna be in either side too extreme. If not, then nothing harmonizes to get anything valuable done, productively done. We live in a society now of extreme politics, right? Think of that concept. Extreme Democrat, extreme Republican. The people who are one sensible in the middle somewhere, like, oh, I overlap on both. I like some of the stuff on this side, some on this side. That's not out there anymore. Everything's extreme, right? Everything is cancel people. Cancel them for what? Cancel them because I don't like it. Hey, that's pretty extreme. Could we at least hear the viewpoint first? What a thought? No. Right? I'm offended. You're canceled. Is that moderation? No. Is that balance? No. That's extremism. And even on the other side, we could say there's extreme vulgarity and things to hurt people. That's extreme too. That's a bad as well too. But moving away from that, self-transcendence. Need to find meaning and identity beyond the self, which is like we could get into maybe a God concept, right? Now you're like, oh, I have the physical body. This is just a form of my soul's been implanted in this form. The form grows, it reaches this size, it gets old, it withers, it dies, and then that's it. But through the process, you may think of like, well, all right, I get all that. I got past the programming, Professor Ross, I got past the conditioning that I was taught and instructed. I started asking questions on my own to try to figure out real answers on my own, right? Then I come to some conclusions that I need to search a little bit deeper to that invisible force inside, right? That animates this body, that actually gives it some existence, which you could say maybe most of us disregard or don't think about, right? Because we live in a physical plane. We're like, I'm just thinking about these physiological needs. That's it. I need a job, car, I wanna work out, I wanna look good, I need new makeup, I need new clothes, like, that's cool. If you're in that phase, right? And this is the most important thing, you know? But at some point, you should be thinking larger than that. Like, man, there's a bigger force behind it. There's a bigger force behind even some of our scientific measurements that we could, quote unquote, say #facts. That's a good slogan. We're talking material things that can be measured and tested, but some things are intuitive that we know to be bigger than our understanding. What time is it? 2:15. All right, I'll let you go. Well, we'll continue with this. I want to continue and finish it up on Monday. Don't forget to try to participate in at least one of those studies, and then the rest you can write papers for credit. But